Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim that the captives will be released and the prisoners will be freed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God.
Okay, so today we got someone new that I have never had on my channel before, but he's very, very well known in the gold community. And because we just had gold blow vertical, made a new all-time high, I wanted to reach out to Andy Schectman, and what a blessing that he responded. And he said, absolutely, let's do an interview together. So today we have Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin. We're gonna talk about gold, precious metals, silver, the BRICS, everything financial, because Andy's got a world of knowledge. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Bo, I've been following you for a long time. I've been doing this for 34 years, and I've seen a lot of people come and go, and you never left. So it's an honor to finally be here, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to having a discussion.
So Andy, tell me a little bit about how long, or let's tell my viewers, how long you've been involved in precious metals. So give them like a little bit of a history on yourself, because this is new, and tell us where you sell precious metals, where you're based off. So let's start with that, and then we'll go from talking about everything about the financial system.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing this. Miles Franklin, my father and I started 34 years ago this February. We have done well over 9 billion in sales. We've never had a customer complaint. Something we're very proud of. We are one of only 27 authorized resellers to the U.S. Mint, probably the greatest achievement of my career. I live in Delray Beach, Florida, Bo, where we've had a satellite office for 12 years, but my home office is in the state of Minnesota. And when things got kind of crazy in the state of Minnesota around the time of the George Floyd incident and the defunding of the police, I decided to move my family down to Southern Florida, where we've had an office. But I left my corporate entity there for one reason, and that is that it is the only state in the United States that regulates what is a federally non-regulated precious metals industry. And as such, we are held, I believe, to the highest standard in the industry, with a large surety bond, with background checks of all of our employees and principals, myself included, and continuing education and compliance that is unique only to companies either domiciled in Minnesota or sell into the state. And so between our reputation, which I think is the best in the industry, our Mint accreditation, and our state of Minnesota licensing, I think it's the safest transaction in the industry working with us. But I think it's fair, before we have this discussion, to tell you a little story about the way that I look at gold and silver. I was 19 years old when I started this company with my father, and didn't have a clue in the world about where life was going to take me. My father's middle name is Miles, and his best friend, who lent us $60,000 to start the company in 1989, middle name was Franklin, in a one-room office the size of a closet. And my dad said to me, Andy, there's going to be one rule and only one rule, or I'll fire you. Okay, Dad, I can deal with that. What's that one rule? He says, you're not going to make the same mistakes that I made as a young man, and you're going to, every 2 weeks that you get paid, you're going to put some of that money into gold and silver, period. I said, cool, I can deal with that. Now, I own the company outright, and I have for quite some time. And although he's still somewhat my partner, at least a sounding board, he won't fire me anymore, that's for sure. But I have honored my word to him. And honestly, it's the best gift he ever gave me. And that is teaching me how to pay myself first, and understanding that gold and silver is not an investment. It's wealth. It's been wealth for 5,000 years. That's outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, frankly, anything the world has ever thrown at it. And I find it interesting that over the last roughly 20 months, not only the most well-funded, but the most well-informed traders on the planet, the central banks, have bought more gold than at any time in history. And I believe to them it's not an investment either. It is unencumbered wealth that is simultaneously not someone else's liability, at least if it's in your own possession. So To me, gold is wealth. And I've been doing this for a very long time. It'll be 34 years here next month. And it's been quite a wild ride, but nothing like we're seeing right now. And I'm excited to jump into it here with you and follow your lead and talk about it.
My starting point on precious metals, again, they're precious for a reason. They're called precious for a reason. My starting point was in the 70s when I was witnessing, as a child, seeing, my father, who grew up in Canada, there was bank runs at the time, and there was lines out the door of all the banks to go get precious metals. I'm sure you know this. And so that's when gold shot up to just around $800, and silver at that time shot up to like $49 now. Just the silver squeeze with the brothers that caused
Hunt brothers.
The Hunt brothers, right? And so ever since that moment in time, gold's been, it went down for years and years and years after that. But that was my, take on like, why are my parents buying gold, and why is everybody lined up out there's lines out the bank to buy so that was my introduction to gold, right? And only to come realize later in life that, that it is real money. And really my definition of gold, it's an insurance policy against the guys that make the paper, against everybody and everything political, because they've used the financial system. And so I've come to realize that gold and silver literally follow what's called Daniel's cycle in the Bible. And so I've been probably one of the only people in the world when silver shot up to $49 in 2011, I called the exact day it topped. Then I said 4 months later, gold's going to do it. And it did it to the exact day. I don't want any glory for that, because you know what I used? Daniel's cycle. You run the Daniel cycle of time, 1,260 days from the prior top, and there's your next top. So that's what I used. God revealed that to me. And so what I'm trying to show you is, see, silver and gold, you remove an L and you got God. See, it's God's money. And Haggai 2 verse 8 says, the silver and the gold are mine, saith the Lord. And what's not the Lord's? A paper money system. And that paper money system is used in a mechanism of control called Babylon. And so what did Nixon do? I've heard you talk in a couple of podcasts. What did Nixon do? He took us off the gold standard in 71. And you realize that was on August 5th. This is how crazy this stuff is. And when I start putting the pieces together, it freaks me out. So Nixon takes us off the gold standard August 15th of 1971. When you read Leviticus in the Bible, thou shalt consecrate the 50th year. So you run 50 years from August 15th of 71, you get August 15th, 2021. That's the day Kabul fell.
That is one of the biggest turning points, I believe, I think that will go down in history books that day as one of the biggest events or the turning points for the United States. The day that we left Afghanistan in a way that is, you grew up the same time, you're a little older than me, but not by much. And, there's an old theory, old saying, no Americans left behind. Well, we left 2,000 to 3,000 Americans behind enemy lines, and not to mention the freedom fighters and the interpreters who risked their lives for the U.S. government, were promised military or
billions of dollars of military equipment.
Correct. And there's no coincidence, though, that the day after that, Saudi Arabia signed a joint military cooperation agreement with Russia.
Actually, let me pause you for a minute. Let me just pause, because It was actually, again, let's be clear with this, so no one say, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. No, we know what we're talking about, because it wasn't a day. It was 9 days later. It was and I've got the records. It was on the 24th of August, so exactly 9 days later, because all these things happen on the 24th. And so it's 9 days later to the exact day. And I did several podcasts, and and we were talking about this with different people. But it was 9 days later that the Saudis, who we have a petrodollar contract with, right? 9 days later, the Saudis they signed a contract with Russia. Continue.
Yeah, and then a day or two after that, Nigeria did the same thing. And that began a process where people need to understand what gives the dollar its reserve status has been since 71. When Nixon closed the gold window, the dollar was backed by nothing. It was 2 years later that Kissinger struck a deal with the Saudis. We will protect you in the Saudi kingdom, and by extension, you will value oil globally in U.S. dollars. And it's been that way. since 1974. And so every single country on the planet has had to own US dollars and stockpile them in order to purchase oil. So it's a big, big deal when there's another country protecting the Saudi kingdom. It's our protection of them that gave us the dollar hegemony. And the things that have happened along the progression since then have been startling. And, you know, if you look at what's happened since then, Saudi Arabia not only signed these agreements, but they joined the Belt Road Initiative along with every other OPEC producing country. Now, the Chinese Belt Road Initiative is the largest infrastructure project in human history, and it comprises roughly 75% of human population right now, 50% of global GDP, and it's growing. And every OPEC country is on the Belt Road. It is a series of maritime channels and roads and bridges and trade routes that will only be patrolled by military and commerce. It is the Panama Canal on steroids. Subsequently, they applied to BRICS, and Brazil, Russia.
And let me ask you a question. So then Nixon takes us off the gold standard. 9 days later, Saudi signed a contract with Russia. 2 years later, to the exact day, on the 24th of August, 2023. So this year, Saudis decide to join the BRICS. They agree to it. So that's on the 24th, 2 years to the exact day. And so now let me ask you a question, because you said simply, the petrodollar contract. So if Saudis are now with the BRICS, that means that there's no more, I think it's a fun phrase I coined. I did a Greg Hunter interview. What did I say? There's no more petro in the dollar. In other words, the dollar's run out of gas. So expand on all that.
Yeah, so it hasn't officially happened, but it's getting real close. And I'll tell you something that happened just a few days ago. Now, I think this is going to be a very interesting interview for me because I am a kind of a macro-minded person. I see big pictures. And one of the things that's given me notoriety is I've talked about this in over 1,400 YouTube videos going back to 2019. This has been my thesis, my progression, but putting these dates to it and the numerical significance is fascinating to me. So if I get some of these things out of order, just know that the fact that you're adding a little glue to my thesis is welcomed. So,
oh no, yeah, that's the whole point. To say you're so knowledgeable in all this. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts. I really want to talk to you because the knowledge in your head is awesome. It's truly a blessing to listen to you. And I always, no one knows everything. So it's like in the Bible, it says, we all see through the glass dimly, but we're all trying to look through that glass, right? We all want to put the pieces together. So please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, and I'm battling a little bit of a cold, so do the best I can here. So along the way, let's talk about some of the other things that the Saudis have done. And they've also joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet. Along the way, they also joined the BRICS New Development Bank, which is kind of like the World Bank. To the west, this is the new BRICS Development Bank, which will help finance all of the ambitions of the BRICS nations. And they've also told the folks in Davos at the World Bank meeting that they would be open to taking other currencies for oil. Now, they said open. Excuse me. And that leads me to a very, very interesting development that has happened here just this week. Just this week right now in United Arab Emirates, we have the United Nations having a summit on climate change. And it's being presided over by the head of the United Arab Emirates state-owned oil company. So this summit that's being presided over by the chairman, I guess you could say, of the United Arab Emirates state-owned oil company has invited 200 countries to the United Arab Emirates, and they're there this week. Now, the United Arab Emirates is the 7th largest producer of oil in the world, and they are an OPEC country, and they were just admitted to BRICS along with Saudi Arabia. Now, what I'm about to tell you may not be as provocative as Saudi Arabia saying, thanks for the memories, guys, but that's exactly what the United Arab Emirates just did. They just formally announced that we are no longer taking dollars for oil. This is a huge shot across the bow of the West. And what people need to understand is that the fact that the synthetic demand that has been created by every country on the planet having to stockpile dollars to purchase oil for 50 years has given the dollar, in many respects, this inordinate strength. Strength to the point where even though we are 130% debt to GDP, a level that no country has ever come back from, ever in history, without defaulting, either outright or by hyperinflation, the dollar is still ridiculously strong. You often hear it, it's the cleanest smelling shirt in the dirty laundry hamper. But if every country on the planet is incentivized to no longer hold dollars, the ramifications are extraordinary. Extraordinary to the extent of immediately all those dollars flooding the United States, creating hyperinflation. And the byproduct of that hyperinflation would be interest rates that would spike to levels that no one can comprehend. Certainly not what Chairman Powell wants to do, but much, much higher. Now, when that happens, that's your Klaus Schwab moment, because stocks, bonds, real estate, and the banking system itself, which is highly over-leveraged and undercapitalized right now, would all be inversely correlated to that massive spike in interest rates. And people will say to me along the way, all these years I've been doing it, we're going down the road where we have two options. We can inflate or we can default. Richard Russell used to say inflate or die. But how about a third option? And that third option is to find a villain. And that villain would be Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC. How could they do this to us? What makes everything crazier is that if you look at the lead economic advisor to this government right now, to the United States government, is a man named Jared Bernstein, whose entire thesis is to lose the world reserve status. It is an exorbitant privilege we can no longer afford. So how do you do that? Well, you weaponize the dollar, and then you tell Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of the dollar hegemony, hey, guys, thanks for the 50 years. It's been great, but we're going green, and we just signed an executive order to do so. You couldn't draw it up any better. And what you are seeing by all of these countries finding safety in numbers is pushback against the coercion, against the sanctions, against the bullying that the U.S. Has, in a very, at least the way the world looks at it, hypocritical manner, bullied their way around the world. And things are moving in a more mutually cooperative way, if you will, with the new BRICS development. And I think it's just getting going.
Let me ask you a question. You were saying, as you were speaking, I'm listening, and you said the Klaus Schwab moment. Let me get your opinion on that, what you're saying by that, and an explanation. And then I want to layer in some Bible on that. So give us like what you mean by the Klaus Schwab moment so the viewers can understand. Because I think I know what you're saying, but explain to the viewers.
All right. Well, let's first talk. The 2022 balance sheet came out, Bo, recently. It showed that we have 33 trillion in debt, right? Well, we are now. It was 32 back then, but now it's over 33. And let's just quantify this. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. You're talking Neanderthals stalking the plains of Europe. That's 1 trillion seconds. So we have a $33 trillion debt, but they said, oh, by the way, we have about 130 or 40 trillion in unfunded liabilities, 70 plus trillion unfunded in Social Security alone, Medicare, Medicaid, government, military pensions, etc. In essence, we're insolvent. We are broke. But here's our balance sheet, 5 trillion, of which the largest asset on the U.S. government's balance sheet, 2022, is student debt of $1.6 trillion, a record to the public and a debt obligation to the public, an asset to the United States government. So the land of the free and the home of the brave is in essence 130 or 40 or 50 trillion, pick your number, depending upon who you listen to, in the hole. And so that's the starting point, right? So since 2020, government has printed more money in the last 3.5 years than in the history of the country preceding it. That money, along with suppressed interest rates, which massively suppressed interest rates, where the federal fund rate was at zero or near it for 10 years, created huge distortions and misallocations in capital and resources, where asset prices lost all their discovery mechanisms and went parabolic based upon an environment where money was free, in essence, and interest rates were non-existent, and money would just rain from the sky, and we were paid to not work. So all of these assets that make people feel rich, their 401k, their home price, their stock portfolio, have all been blown to sky-high valuations in a world of illusion, of suppressed interest rates and easy money. So that's where we start. So you realize, or the government does, hey, what do we do? We've got all this debt. We've offsourced our manufacturing. We have nothing in the way of assets. We can inflate our way out of this, but that won't go very long. We can't really default, but maybe we can find a villain. So we weaponize the dollar against Russia. We make and Iran, two of the BRICS countries. We make people think, geez, are we next? We tell Saudi Arabia we are going green so that they now associate and grow together with this growing chorus of countries that right now control roughly 80+% of all of the world's oil supply, 70% of all the world's natural gas, not to mention all of the other commodities they own. And they say to us, just like the United Arab Emirates said this week, the day before they invite 200 countries to a UN summit held in their country, presided over by the head of their state-owned oil company, we're no longer taking dollars. And when that happens, when every country on the planet who has had to stockpile them for 50 years sells them, it will be like the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd at the end of the movie when they're on the Comex floor and one brother says to the other brother, sell, Mortimer, sell, as he's watching his wealth disappear. As everyone is selling dollars, that's what the world will do. They will dump dollars and buy anything. And when those dollars hit our shore, they create hyperinflation. They overwhelm the issuer, that being the US. The byproduct of hyperinflation would be interest rates that would spike to the moon to compensate. You can't have 20% inflation and 5% interest rates or your currency dies. So the market dictates that interest rates spike to the moon, and everything that is blown sky high in terms of valuations of assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, collapse along with the collapsing dollar and the banking system that you see 5% interest rates, and look what it's doing to the banking system. What if they're 25%? And so it's a situation where the whole thing resets. That's what Klaus Schwab said would happen. You'll be happy, you'll own nothing, and you'll rent, and you'll be happy.
So to be clear, Klaus Schwab's agenda is to collapse everything and then grab control of humanity. Okay, so that's what I want the viewers to understand. That's what the Great Reset agenda is. Okay, now that will be compared, and biblically, when you study scriptures, right? Nimrod was building the Tower of Babel. Okay, understand what that which has been will be again. Satan's stupid. He repeats. He can't create, so he just repeats things that have happened. And so they're trying to redo what happened at the Tower of Babel. But just before the tower was complete, God showed up and changed everything and blew up the tower fell, everything fell apart. So what I'm trying to have people understand is we're coming into this moment of time where everything that they're pushing forward looks incredibly for them. It looks horrible for us, for humanity. They look like they're winning. They're coming in to basically for their kill shot. And let's throw some prophecy on this. The Kim Clement prophecy, the brothers of Goliath stand in glee. Who are the brothers of Goliath? So brothers of Goliath means that they're big also, they're giants also. So that'll be the BRICS nations. The brothers of Goliath stand in glee. We will cripple you.
One party of people. Amongst them stood one that God had set aside to be the leader of this nation. And then I heard gold. He said to me, he will restore the fortunes in this nation. This man will throttle the enemies of Israel. This man will throttle the enemies of the West. And there are highly embarrassing moments that are about to occur. And people will become very afraid. I have said I will bring this nation to its knees. And God said, you have been humbled. And then you shall hear the sounds of great victory. For they are saying, how do we kill the giant? How do we kill the giant of debt? How do we kill the giant of socialism? How do we kill the giant of human secularism? I have placed that man amongst you. These that shall reject him shall be shocked at how he takes the giant down. The giant of death, the giants that have come, the brothers of Goliath, stand in glee watching America. We will cripple you. You will lose your credit. But God said, watch, I said 20,000. And he will take a simple stone and he will hold it up and they will laugh at him. But the plan is so brilliant, says the Lord. It could only have been given by me.
Who are the brothers of Goliath? Brothers of Goliath means that they're big also, they're giants also, so that'll be the BRICS nations. The brothers of Goliath stand in glee, we will cripple you. So who's you? The United States, okay? So the BRICS nations are going to cripple you, the United States. So that's exactly how this is going to play out. We are now watching what Kim Clement was talking about in 2005, I believe it was, or it might have been 2015, but he was talking about this 10 years ago plus, okay? So we're watching prophecy unfold right in front of us right now. Brother, we'll just cripple you, we'll destroy your credit. And this is what's about to happen. So we're going to see biblical prophecy unfold right in front of us. Now, the exciting part is where we are in time. So this is the part that when you look in the natural, see, you're seeing all of these things and you have this incredible knack of putting all these pieces together, Andy, which I love about you because I've listened to a couple of your podcasts and boy, just to listen to you speak is awesome. How you can just take all of these events that are happening and describe it in such a beautiful manner, because one of the beautiful things I love about you two is you speak about money. Like in the 70s, it was in the millions. Now we're in the quadrillions. And I love the fact that you use the 131 million years, because that's how long it takes to count to a quadrillion. So this is like the stuff that's going on in the world. It's a joke. We started with a droplet of water. Now we've got an ocean of money from a droplet of money. That's how much money's been created. Why? To control us, to enslave us. And so now this is the cool part. So if we look at scriptures, Israel was in bondage with Pharaoh in Exodus for 400 years. Mayflower landed 400 years ago. This is 400 years from when the first Thanksgiving was, right now. Okay. Then you got also Klaus Schwab, who you referenced. He founded the World Economic Forum in 71, but it was in 73 that they published the Davos Manifesto in 73. It was in 73 that you had the Yom Kippur War. It was in 73 you had Roe v. Wade became law. It was in 73 that the petrodollar contract was created. You see how awesome all of this is, Andy? Everything's lining up for 2023. But the crazy part is we only got 1 month left. So all of this is lining, and then you starting in January, what are you hearing? That they're going to start something potentially could happen with the BRICS and starting of January, right? So it's really crazy how all of this is lining up. But all I know is that we're going to see the fall of Babylon, because Babylon the Great is fallen. So we'll see how this all plays out. But from a timing perspective, I love where we're sitting right now, because those that prepared, listen to me, have been buying precious metals. All I know is that their plans are supposed to fail. This is the cool part. So as much as Klaus Schwab might have plans and agenda, just like the Tower of Babel fell before it was completed, we're supposed to see that happen, and we can just wait and watch. But I would agree with what you're saying, because when the dollar falls, interest rates will spike double digit. It happened to Russia years ago. They went double digit overnight. That's going to collapse the real estate market. It's going to cause banks to blow up. It's going to be crazy what's about to happen in our world, but no one sees it coming just yet.
Mm-mm. No, they don't. And it's interesting, I referenced the chief economic advisor, Jared Bernstein, who wrote the report, Dethrone King Dollar. And when Trump put tariffs on China, he said, great, now we'll lose our reserve status. That was picked up in the Washington Post. And he's an advocate of that. You couldn't draw it up any better. But the number two in charge is a lady named Lael Brainerd, who is a modern monetary theorist who spent time at the Treasury and she worked at the Fed. She ushered in the new payment system back behind the Fed right now that came out 2 months ago called Fed Now. Most people don't know what it is. They will by for sure within a few months. And it is like Venmo or Zelle. It's instant settlement. It'll take the place of checks and wires. It is backed by the Fed. It's Venmo on steroids. And when she was working with the Boston Fed and MIT in development of the new central bank digital currency that the Bank of International Settlements also wrote into law, said everyone needs to have one by 2025. And just like the Green Deal that Biden signed, he also signed that into executive order. And so Lael Brainerd, by definition, wants to cull the banks and have just a couple of banks, or big banks, to do mortgages and loans and leases, and the central bank digital currency going directly from the government. So, you know, when you talk about the way they have it set up, they have a system that is massively over-leveraged, massively undercapitalized, in a country that is not like it once was. You know, when our parents were kids, and when we were kids, largely, this country was united, and there was respect for authority and for God and religion, and there was not such divisiveness. There wasn't cancel culture. There wasn't censorship. There wasn't transgenderism. There wasn't all of these things that have been shoved down our throats, creating such divisiveness between red and blue and black and white and rich and poor and vaccine and no vaccine. I mean, there's so many sides being chosen, and lawlessness in the cities, and it's a scary thing. We have 65% of this country paycheck to paycheck. We have 45% over 100,000 a year paycheck to paycheck. We have record student debt at 1.6 trillion, record household debt at 17 trillion, record credit card debt at 1 trillion. I mean, go on and on and on. We are over indebted. We are undercapitalized. We are divisive. It's as if they are doing this to reset everything. And the only way that people that I listen to or talk to would ever accept a central bank digital currency, I mean, and I think in scripture, a lot of people call it the mark of the beast. And the only way people would ever take this would be if they had no choice. Well, how do you get that to happen? Well, you blow up the whole system and point to the villain, OPEC and Xi Jinping and Putin, who did this to us. And the interesting thing is this. We talked about the $33 trillion debt. The unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions, they're all owed to us. The central banks of the world, China is at a 17-year low in treasuries. They're selling them and not rolling them over. Saudi Arabia is at a 7 or 8 year low on treasuries. They're selling them. They're not rolling them over. Most of these big governments are selling treasuries. Who's buying them? Oh, yeah, that's us. The hedge funds, the people, the banks, they're all chasing yield, all of them. And they're bleeding money out of the banking system, making it more unstable, going directly to the treasury, chasing yield. The debt is owed to us. So when you have an event that they did to us and the whole system collapses, including the banks, have no fear. Lael Brainerd is here. Sign on the dotted line. Take the CBDC, and we'll make you whole. It's a whole heck of a lot easier to pay or to start over on a modern monetary theory basis if the people that you are paying back are your own people. Most of the debt now is owed to us. So when you talk about all of this being planned or just too stupid to be stupid, I mean, I think this is a planned demolition. They are trying to reset the system. Now, I don't know how it all plays out, but I will tell you that all of the things that I see, whether it be the instability here or our mismanagement of the world reserve currency or our weaponizing of the dollar or our telling of Saudi Arabia, hey, thanks for the memories, guys, but we're going green, or the way that we embarrassed ourselves on the world stage in Kabul. Any way you look at it, these are things that are defining moments that continue to progress along a line. At the same time, you have the BRICS that, yes, there are now 11 countries that have signed on to it, with 40 more that have formally applied. 40. And when this is all said and done, if you just right now take the BRICS, the Belt Road Initiative, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union, these are all pretty much the same countries, you're at 85% of human population. The majority of the world is coalescing against the West and the hegemony. Now, let's hope that we're able to stand with our backs to the wall and rise from the ashes of all of this craziness. But the thing that frightens me the most, more than anything, really, is the divisiveness in this country. There was a poll just taken by a college in Virginia, one of these smaller colleges, and they said that roughly 50% of Democrats believe that violence is justified in getting their point across. And about 40-some% of Republicans said the same thing. So, you're talking about, well, if you don't like what I have to say, so what? I'm going to burn down your city type of thing. Now, I'm just being, tongue in cheek here, but this is a country that's not united anymore. And that makes it a whole lot more difficult. We're broke. We're insolvent. We're at 130% GDP, debt to GDP. No one's ever come back. And we're a divided country. And then the rest of the world is looking at us and saying, well, they don't even apply the law equally anymore. Lady Liberty with the blindfold and holding the scale of justice. Well, if you had Trump on one end and Biden on the other, how's that working out? And so they don't think that our elections might not be so legitimate and our borders are wide open. This is not the country that we once were and the country that everyone wanted to be a part of. And I'm a patriot. I come from nothing. My family comes from nothing. This country gave me more opportunities in the last 34 years than I ever deserved. And I love and thank God every day for it. But what I see our leaders doing right now in destabilizing and creating divisiveness and animosity and hypocrisy. Let me just give you one little parable here, which will kind of underscore the way the world looks at us. We invaded Iraq 20 years ago, 2003. Some would say illegally. We were in search of weapons of mass destruction. Sorry, we didn't find them. We're still there. We are still there, and they're not even allowed to direct their oil revenue. We do, right? And we're sanctioning, by the way, 14 of their banks right now as we occupy their country and put in supposedly a new government. We're sanctioning 14 of their banks because it's so hot there that these banks are trying to trade with Iran to buy natural gas to cool their homes in the 130-degree summer. So we sanction their banks. But get this.
Andy, that Saddam tried to sell oil for dinar, right? And
that's right. That's right. And Gaddafi also for gold. But get this. They made $90 billion last year in oil revenue, and that money's sitting in the New York Fed. Last month, the Iraqis said to the U.S., "Can we please have $1 billion of the $90 billion that you're holding for us that we made last year?" And they said, "No." Really? No. So they just made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business and you trade in dollars, you will go to prison and you'll lose your business. As of January 1, 2024, there will be no green dollar bills in any bank in Iraq. And they just publicly said, "We would love to be admitted into the BRICS if you'll have us." So sides are being drawn. The hypocrisy is being stood up against, the coercion, the sanctioning. And you have China on the other hand. And people say, who's going to trust China? And I'll get to that later when we talk about gold and blockchain. But China, as an example, has gone into Iran and into Saudi Arabia and mended fences. These are two countries, Sunni and Shiite, they hate each other. Yet they're now building embassies in each other's countries. They're the old adage, my enemy's enemy is my friend. They are doing it in a mutually cooperative manner. Yeah, they just built the first ever road and railway between Iran and Iraq. They're coming in and they're going into Africa and South America and building roads and bridges and maritime channels and oil refineries and gold and silver mines and teaching these people how to industrialize and to grow their prosperity. They're doing it not with coercion, but with cooperation, where we go in and coerce and military and with the dollar sanctions and all of these things. And for the very first time, these countries have now the wherewithal and the coordination to join together. And as time goes, you will see this bloc grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And let's not forget, 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals on the planet are in the BRICS members. So, this is not something to take lightly. And when you see the UAE in front of 200 countries say, no more dollars, the 7th largest producer of oil in the world and an OPEC member who just was admitted to BRICS with Saudi, yeah, this is not something to just gloss over. It's a big deal.
I want to show you something. If you can see this,
Please.
This is what I want to show you with regards to how this is all coming together. So notice all the countries that you referenced. Guess what color they are? Green,
Red.
white. Look at their flags. Okay. So this is your 4 horsemen. You also referenced, Revelation. You referenced in the mark of the beast system, right? So the four horsemen are riding first before, this is critical, before the Antichrist comes on scene. So what I'm trying to say is that the four horses right here, they are preparing for the Antichrist, but you'll notice all these nations, their colors. Okay, so where do you think that the beast system is going to rise from? You see how this is all coming together? It's wild how we're seeing this all play out. But what you just described in beautiful detail was the setting up of the four horsemen, which is then ultimately brings in the beast system in the future. So how crazy is this?
It's scary. It's scary.
We're watching the setting up of the beast, of the Antichrist beast system coming in the future. But again, it's not just yet, because before it happens, God's going to make a way. So I wanted to show you this as well, too, to give you maybe a little bit of insight that you may not be aware of. But with relation to Revelation, okay, you see, when the financial system flips, when it has a massive problem, okay, you mentioned Lady Liberty just a second ago with the scales, right? So if you look in Revelation, there is four horses, but the third one, you see the rider's got scales in his hands. Okay, and so the scales, and whenever a seal manifests, it's a global phenomenon. Okay, so what was the first phenomenon that was global? Well, Corona. The second phenomenon that was global was after the George Floyd riots, violence erupted globally across the world, and now we got even the Ukraine war. So the second seal manifest. Now the third seal is financial collapse, the US dollar collapse, and the flipping of the scales. See the scales in his hands? So we're going to see the financial rebalancing, and we're going to see where God's money, where you come in with gold and silver, the explosion of precious metals, gold and silver. Haggai 2 verse 8, the silver and the gold are mine, saith the Lord. So we're going to see the paper system flip with the gold and silver. So when this event goes down, it's a global phenomenon, because all these things are global when the seals manifest. And so we're watching all of this, and I love that you referenced Lady Liberty and the scales, because you nailed it. See, that's the third seal. It's a global event. It's a financial event. Kim Clement prophesied it. The brothers of Goliath stand in glee. We will cripple you. And listening to you speak is truly a blessing, because your knowledge of the global events that are going on with a global initiative and all of the nations that you just described, I don't know this like you do. So I love your presentation, because you beautifully described the setup.
Well, I think I've been missing talking to you for a long time, because you're kind of backfilling a lot of the things that I talk about that really make a lot of sense to me, and I'm hopeful that we don't see the subsequent numbers on that list, because it becomes a little concerning. But I think, when you look around and you see what's happening around the world, it's becoming very obvious, even to people who can't articulate it, that all is not right. And so I do believe that things are going to get a lot worse, and I think it's just beginning. And I think you're going to see very, very big problems in this country that people have no idea what's coming. And something as simple as the fact that, I talk to a lot of very wealthy people. In fact, I live in a community in Florida. It's a golf community. And the guy that lives across the street from me is one of the largest money managers in Florida. He's in the Forbes top 50 list. And the only time he ever mentions gold or silver to me is when the price goes down. And he wouldn't know a gold coin if it fell on his foot. But our wives are friends, and I'm cordial with him. And I went out to dinner with him a few nights ago, and I asked him, "Do you know what a bail-in is?" He says, "No, what's that?" This is a money manager who's in the Forbes top 40 list. He's managing $3 or $4 billion and has no idea what a bail-in is, that it was written into law in the Dodd-Frank Act. And that's coming, that you are an unsecured creditor of a bank.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
$7 trillion in uninsured deposits right now. And all it will take will be one bank to fail to create a massive panic in this country. And I think that that's just the tip of the iceberg. But again, with all of these banks undercapitalized and over leveraged with assets on their balance sheet at 50 cents on the dollar, one bank gets bailed in and everyone says, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I thought they'd get bailed out. And that's why there was such outrage when Silicon Valley and Signature Bank were bailed out. And Janet Yellen told the senator from Oklahoma, well, you know, we had an uber majority decision at the FDIC, the FOMC, which is the Federal Reserve, myself and the president, that if they weren't bailed out, the system would go down. But, you know, banks from now on will be bailed in. You are an unsecured general creditor of the bank. So anything over 250,000 FDIC limit is gone. It goes
Well, actually, let me pause you
bank.
for a second. There was just an article last week I was reading that there was actually, I think, Zero Hedge published an article with relation to the FDIC of their holdings of reserve assets and versus the money supply of creditors in the bank. So if you did the math of what they have in the FDIC to basically support the money to basically as an insurance policy, it's about 3%. So if you have $100,000, there's enough for $3,000 in the FDIC to pay you back. There's no longer 250,000 because remember the money supply is blown up so much in the past 3 years, 4 years. You've seen home prices double because they've created money out of thin air. So the money's blown up. So there's no more millions. We're in the quadrillions. So the money supply has caused everything. You can see it in real estate prices just exploding in prices because there's so much money out there right now. And so we're setting, the stage is set for horrific things to go down in this world. And I'm laughing about it because they created this, the money system. I've said this in every podcast, the money system's a fraud.
Yeah, it is. They have 128 billion backing 18 trillion. It's a joke. It's a piece of dental floss under the high wire. It's not a net. And, you know, when Silicon Valley Bank failed, the FDIC was borrowed from the Fed $170 billion. So you have the FDIC borrowing money from the Fed to create an orderly transition. And so, you know, look, this whole thing is upside down. And the question is, what is the moment, the event that breaks it? I, for 3 years, have said it will come when Saudi Arabia and the rest of the OPEC countries who are on the Belt Road say to the world, hey, look, we've coalesced with the majority of human population who's not going green. And you are, and we respect you for that. Thank you for the 50 years of service and of protection, but we've got that end covered now too. So we're going to take other currencies for oil and bang, like that, every country on the planet dumps dollars. And that is when it all breaks apart. To me, that is when everything gets very, very real, and it's a religious experience for most of the people in this country who will be completely and totally wiped out. If you are in the system, you have no way out.
So here is a chart. I don't know if you can see this on the screen. The chart you're looking at, the very top chart. So I do chart analysis. God shows me like where to look, and I get specific charts to compare historic cycles with present day, if that makes sense. Okay. So the top chart is a historic cycle from years and years ago. I won't say when it's from, but it's 10 plus years ago. Okay. The chart in the middle is important because this is the U.S. Federal Reserve note. So from December 2020, you'll see that's letter A. It went up into October 2022. Tell me that that's not nearly perfect. The top chart with the middle chart from point A to point B. Then you'll see from point B, the red points 1, 2, and 3, you'll see the dollar in the middle there dropped exactly like it did on the historic chart at the top. And then you'll see it went up into point E like Edward in October, exactly like it did on the historic chart. And if you look at the bottom one, E in October was at the bottom one, that's gold. That's when gold made its final bottom at 1800. And so point E on a charting system, those you know charting, it's called a lower high. So the US dollar made a lower high in October, while gold made a higher low, which is a bull trend. Okay.
Right.
And so now we just saw gold break vertical, have made a new all-time high. Why? Because I was doing podcasts in October saying the dollar is finished. The dollar is finished as of October letter point E, because I know the cycle into years forward. So far, this cycle is 3 years, 100% accurate. The dollar completed its lower high in October at point E, while gold finished a higher low, which is a bull trend, and it just broke vertical. So this is the problem the US dollar's got relative to the historic cycle. It's a down cycle for years, Andy. In the first quarter, it's going to plunge. The dollar is going to plunge in the first quarter based on this 3-year cycle that hasn't skipped a beat yet. What I'm saying is, you tell me, but you know that the dollar and gold are opposite trades. That's why I showed that. Okay. So when the dollar plunges in the first quarter, guess what gold's going to do?
Yeah,
blow
exactly.
vertical, right? Guess what silver's going to do? Blow vertical. So the cycle that I'm showing you is 3 years. It hasn't skipped a beat in 3 years, Andy. That's crazy. And it's a down cycle and so the cycle that I'm showing you literally reiterates everything you were just saying. But when I write cycle work, it's cycles precede events. You see, so
no, it's fascinating, and I believe in those trends, and I believe in repetitiveness and trends, and maybe this is why the central banks, not only the most well-funded but the most well-informed traders on the planet, have bought more gold than since records began more than 70 years ago, and that trend has continued in 2023. I think it's very interesting too when you hear the words of the Polish central bank. And the Polish central bank has bought second most gold in the world this year, behind China. And I think, first of all, it's important to understand that the banks are doing this, in my opinion, because it's increasingly clear that this debt path that we are on is not sustainable, and the central banks are preparing for a new system. But it's also important to note that in April of 2019, the Bank of International Settlements reclassified gold as the world's only other Tier 1 reserve asset next to US dollars. So let me say that one more time. The only other Tier 1 reserve asset. So I want to just read to you one thing, Bo, that I think is interesting when you talk about what could happen and you talk about something happening, an event. And we always try to figure out what that event would be. I don't think many people saw what came in 2020. So many of us saw that coming, but whatever. So anyways, Poland has been massively, they bought 105 tons of gold this year already, the second in the world in terms of acquisition. But the head of their national bank is a man named Adam Glapinski. He said that holding gold was a matter of financial security. And he said, get this, gold will retain its value even when someone cuts off the power to the global financial system, destroying traditional assets based on electric accounting records. Of course, we do not assume that this will happen, but as the saying goes, forewarned is always insured. And the central bank is required to be prepared for even the most unfavorable circumstances. That's why we see a special place for gold in our foreign exchange management process. So, take that for what it's worth. You have the head of a bank, the National Bank of Poland, saying, well, when someone pulls the plug on the electronic accounting system, that everything is digital nowadays, everything is a digital record, well, gold will be there to back it up. So I don't know, is it coincidence? I don't know. I find it very interesting, at least in terms of his words and his comments.
I want to finish with a couple of screens here, which I think, might be interesting to you. So this is something that I want to share with you. When you read Matthew 6:33, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God. Now, the reason I reference that is because all these things that are going on in the world, they feel like we're involved in it. It feels real, but everything political, it's not political, it's biblical. All these things that are going on in the world, they're biblical events, but what we're watching it manifest in the physical with political events, if that makes sense. So when you read Ecclesiastes 2:26, you might find this interesting. See, like I consider you a wise man, right? And it's just you have a lot of wisdom, and you're pushing this information to people so they can make wise choices. Because none of us want to tell anybody what to do. It's the worst thing we could ever do. Our goal is to educate people and give them the knowledge so they can make good, wise choices. So Ecclesiastes 2:26 states, "To the person who pleases God, He gives people knowledge and happiness." He's given us wisdom. Okay. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth. What are the central banks doing? What is JP Morgan doing? Okay. This is the crux of it. To hand over to those who please God. So as much as they might have plans to do certain things, you see, events in our world, they're not political, they're biblical. And we're going to see these things happen. So as much as the central, they know, because they're playing the game. They're stacking their cards. They're stacking their deck. They think they can do something. They think they're going to win. And this is when they find out that there's a God and something beyond their control happens. And that's called a biblical event. And, we call it sometimes black swans. So what I'm saying is that, I showed you the seals, right? Before the central bank digital currency can come to be, okay, you have to have all four horses riding. We don't have the fourth horse yet. We don't even have the third. The third is the great wealth transfer. So we first have to have the flipping of the scales, like you talked about the Statue of Liberty. The scales have to flip. Where did that happen in the Bible? The writing on the wall. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom, Babylon, has come to an end. That's going to be a third seal moment, which we're about to manifest as this year ends and in 2024 begins. We're at an incredibly crazy, awesome time. What's about to go down here? Because in the future, yes, the central bank digital currency or something like it or whatever will come to be, but that's when all four horses are riding. We haven't seen the third horse, which is the great wealth transfer manifest yet. Okay. So if you understand the times and the season that are written in the Bible, God makes a way with the wealth transfer. He rips away all their money. So when the Antichrist comes on scene, it's only digital in the future. And those like you have and prepared are going to have immense wealth because you are a steward who is going to be guiding people in the future on how to prepare, because it's going to get ugly. But again, it's a double-edged sword, right? It depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on. And so I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an understanding about timing in the Bible, because you have an incredible knowledge of events. What I want to just kind of give to our viewers and maybe the crux of knowledge is that the third seal is the flipping of the scales, is what I'm trying to say, which you basically iterated with, with a Statue of Liberty and the scales of balance of finance, the scales of balance.
I got to tell you, Bo, I've done close to 1,400 interviews since 2019, and this might be the most fascinating and mind-altering interview I've done. I mean, because I've only looked at things, as you said at the beginning, through a certain prism, and I lack the religious context. Although I find it to be incredibly fascinating and illuminating, if you will. I would love more than anything to come back on your show and follow these events along side by side with you, and as things happen. And I have a feeling that the next several months are going to be very interesting, for lack of a better definition. The Chinese, that's a curse. May you live in interesting times. And I don't think these are going to be anything but interesting. You're a fascinating guy, and I've always heard people talk about you and often reference time and specific days, how you were able to nail it. Never quite understood exactly how. I get it now. And I must say it's fascinating. And I think in life there's a lot more than coincidence. So this has been fantastic. And I'd love to come back on anytime you'd have me to not only for my own benefit, but maybe together we can help some people see things a little bit clearer and get out of the way of what's coming, or prepare for what is coming, so that not only can they survive, maybe even thrive a little bit in the transitions that are in front of us.
Yeah, when I saw an interview, a podcast, I think it was on Friday, I heard pretty clear, actually very clearly from the Lord. It basically said, reach out to Andy and have do a podcast with him. And literally, within a few minutes of the email going out, or an hour or two, whatever it was, I got a response, and that's how the Lord works. When it's by design, it's easy. It happens right away, and you literally responded within a few moments or an hour or two of me sending out the email. So I knew that was a divine appointment, and so I want to thank you for being here. But before we finish,
Absolutely.
I want to show you some more time stuff, because you're going to like this one.
Please.
I just got this morning, and I wanted to share this with you and the viewers as well. And so we talk about first seal of Revelation, which was Corona. Those that know my podcast can go and study it, but that was when the world we know changed forever. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but that's exactly when Corona came on scene. It was a game changer. The world we know changed forever. Now,
mine sure did.
Yeah, everybody's world did, but this is the important part. When did it start? You see, all of these seals of Revelation open on biblical feasts. I'm going to repeat that. When a seal manifests, it's in God's time and his seasons, but on his appointed times. So, the first seal, Hanukkah, was in the year 2019, and it was from December 22nd through the 30th. The last day of Hanukkah in the year 2019 was on December 30th. Coincidentally, because there aren't any, okay, on December 30th was the first diagnosed lab case of corona. So on the last day of Hanukkah, corona became a thing. It was the first diagnosed case of corona on December 30th, the last day of Hanukkah. Now,
so that means we should expect something
15th
over the next week.
The last day of Hanukkah is the 15th of December. Hanukkah starts this Thursday. We've been through 4 years of hell, and we're supposed to go into 3 to 4 years of the greatest 3 to 4 years the world has ever seen, Andy. This is going to be the greatest time point in human history, where Babylon falls and the third seal manifests. It's going to be awesome. And so it's Daniel's timeline is 3.5 years. So from that date right there, you're on a 3.5 year cycle. Oh, what a coincidence. The text came out linking Hunter to his dad, Joe, on the first day of summer. Very clearly, 180 degrees from that would be the transition window, 6-month transition, which would complete 4 years, is the winter solstice this December 21. And all I know is historic December is upon us. That's all I know. I do know that the first diagnosed case was December 30th. And my cycle charts are showing that gold and silver broke vertical this weekend into last week, which was right on my cycles. It was supposed to blow vertical, spike down like it just did, $120. It's going to come back up by Friday. It's going to come back up, nothing to new. It's going to just come teeter on Friday into the end of the week. And next week, as we're ending Hanukkah, we're supposed to see a biblical explosion potentially next week, or for sure into year end on gold and silver. So it blows vertical.
Wow.
So that's what the cycles are pointing to right now. And it's perfectly coordinated here with Hanukkah. Everything's lined up into the end of the year. Something big's about to go down here as the year ends. And so we just witnessed, we were all witnessing this past weekend. What do we see? We see silver and gold, particularly, especially, I call, it's like gold's got a roof. For a fact, there's a roof on gold at $2,100, okay? It's not written in stone because they won't write in stone, but it's not allowed to go break $2,100. Silver is not allowed to touch or break $27.
Gold did break 2,100 for a brief.
That's right. And what did they
Sunday
do?
Night.
All the gangsters they all called each other up, and they hammered it down $120 by Monday's close yesterday. Okay,
Right.
so it gapped open $75 on Sunday's open, only to close $120. So in other words, below 2,100 on Monday. They're holding it under 2,100. So now the new floor is $24 on silver, $2,000 gold. That's the floor right now, with a roof at 21 on gold and 27 on silver. They're holding it. When it goes, we're going to see a biblical explosion vertical, and it's supposed to happen this month of December. And this is where they begin to lose control of precious metals. So the financial system has a massive problem this month of December. We're set up for it right here, right now. It's about to go down. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because everything's pointing to the gold and silver blow vertical. You've laid out beautifully all the game players. You laid it all out. All the players, you laid it out beautifully, the players in the game. And now we're just, cycles precede events. The cycle is already screaming, look out into the end of the year. And the events are all beautifully lined up. And we're just waiting for it to go down here. So it's really exciting for us that are involved in precious metals like yourself and myself. But why are we involved in it? Because we know it's real money, right? Everything else is a fraud. And you did a beautiful explanation about, how they did it all and who the game players are. And I'm just trying to layer in the pieces of scriptures and just saying that if there is to be a biblical intervention, it's going to happen on biblical time points. And we're stepping into Hanukkah. So I just wanted to add that and give you something to ponder over as this interview is ending.
You've opened my mind to a whole nother way of looking at things, and I will certainly not miss an episode that you put out from now on. And I like looking at things from various viewpoints, and I think that's one of my strong points, is not try to always pigeonhole myself by learning more and more about less and less till I know everything about nothing. I'm very open-minded and have been my whole life, and I thank you for opening my eyes, and it's been a joy and fascinating to chat with you. And again, please, anytime that you have an opening to discuss, to pick up where we left off, I would love to come back. I think there's, if you're right, especially, there's going to be a lot to talk about in a very short period of time. So I'll always make time for you, Bo. I've really enjoyed this, and thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Andy. God bless you and your family. Thank you, for all the work that you're putting out. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you are a genius. You've got incredible knowledge and wealth of knowledge of what's going on in the world. And thank you for reiterating, explaining to all my viewers of, how this system has been set up and all the people that are coming against the dollar right now. This is a worldwide enterprise called the BRICS that makes up, like you said, 80% of the population are coming against the dollar. Talk about a biblical financial event that's about to go down. Coincidentally,
this is a once in a generation
Shemitah, Jubilee. We're literally, I don't know if you know what Jubilee is, but Jubilee is debt cancellation. So we haven't had a biblical Jubilee, Andy, in hundreds of years because they've controlled everything.
Yeah, well, and the more that you manipulate Mother Nature and the more that you try and control, it's like holding a beach ball underwater.
Yeah.
The further you push it, the greater the resistance and pressure before it takes your head off as it comes up out of the water. So I agree.
And I know you've had podcasts that people have called out the price of $600 silver, right? How do you get that in scriptures? It's very simple. Matthew talks about blessings are 30, 60, 100-fold, right? Well, $20 silver times 30, there's your $600. So that's blessings. That's only the first degree of blessing. Then it goes to 60, 100-fold. So these numbers, when you have a biblical intervention, you get biblical numbers. You don't get percentages, you get multiplication of prices. So that's why I wanted to lay out, we've never, no one in the world ever experienced what's about to go down. But it's so exciting for me because I know it's coming. I know deep down you probably feel something big's about to happen as well too. I just know from a biblical perspective, we're going to see crazy financial events go down, and we're at a cusp, at a time point here where 4 years is ending. It's 3.5, and then the 6-month window of transition. It comes to an end at the end of December, and then the next 4 years are upon us, and they're going to be awesome. So it's really exciting. Thank you for being here, Andy.
Yeah.
How can people find you and reach you?
So we do have a website at milesfranklin.com. You'll find our prices are pretty darn hard to beat. And we've never had a customer complaint. We're a brokerage model. We have 14 brokers that are my best friends from childhood, most of them. I go back my whole life with the people who work with me. We're a family business, and they're all very in-depth. Some of them worked on Wall Street. Some have graduated from Wharton, master's degree from Temple in business administration. Very, very, very smart guys and gals who help you with questions on macroeconomics, geopolitical events, and how it all ties into your finances. So that would be info@milesfranklin.com.
God bless you, Andy.
God bless you too, Bill.